Okay, excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to set my timer because I know that Walter is very strict on 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us for this session, which is the first of a few conversations that we're going to do about the future of space as a service. My name is David Turnbull. I'm the founder of Denizen. We're an early stage startup based out here in Berlin. My background is I'm initially a hotelier turned technologist, and most recently was one of the founders of the first hotel data platform to be built in the industry. And since exiting that company a couple of years ago, I started to turn my attention in the last year to commercial real estate and how we can bring not hotels, but hospitality into that space. So over the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to walk you through from quite a sort of maybe contrarian and also sort of higher level perspective, my kind of thinking with my hotel and platform background, what I think is the opportunity within commercial real estate at the moment. So I hope you'll forgive the kind of hey Siri, hey Siri pun, but if there was ever a time to turn to not just the voice assistant, but actually Apple as a case study, it's now. And I'm going to quote some statistics which are well documented and many of you will know of, but back in 2007, Apple had a 4% market share of the desktop market and 0% of mobile phones. Samsung, Motorola, Sony Ericsson, LG holding 90% of that market share. Today, in terms of industry profit, Apple creates around 70% of that, coming from a height of around 90% in 2015. And how they did this was in understanding that the opportunity was not just in building those key products that we all know and love, devices, the marketplace, the app store, but it was by creating a platform that enabled an ecosystem of producers, app developers and consumers, the iPhone owners, to connect. And by doing this, they created, entire new industries and created immense value for everyone within that ecosystem. And so, in a very kind of simplistic graph, and infographic, and please put up with my very poor PowerPoint skills, this is where I see the opportunity within the commercial real estate space. Is that we now have a new generation, a new ecosystem that previously has never actually connected directly before in its entirety, of employees, of companies, and of landlords. We have a little bit of overlap because I see the way forward being that we have both employees and companies becoming new consumers of space as a service products, and likewise we have landlords, companies, and many companies in between those two acting as the new producers within that ecosystem environment. And if you bear with me for a little bit, some good examples of platforms, companies like Apple, Amazon, Uber are kind of all great opportunities. Examples of where producers and consumers have been connected. And now in the commercial real estate industry, when we talk a lot about this sort of buzzword of space as a service, I see there being huge opportunities to do the same play. There was never a greater chance to shift. And if you look at this landscape, and it's simplistic and probably inaccurate, but it was meant to kind of create the point that at the moment, the opportunity is in the middle, and yet today we have this sort of overview of marketplaces acting as digital listings for space provided as a service, which, while scalable in terms of the volume of listings that it has, is not really able to kind of deliver the service that the consumer would expect, and then vice versa. We have a whole bunch of operators on the other side who operate from tens, if not hundreds, of buildings, but again, not necessarily able to kind of be replicated, scaled on a global scale. And herein lies, in my opinion, this is maybe the contrarian part of the problem with the solution, which is that the future of work solutions that we've created, the space as a service solutions we created, take the lead from global gateway cities like London and New York. And we're here today at a European PropTech event, and thinking of Central Europe in mind. I see the challenge being that we're not necessarily building solutions that reflect the reality. Co-working companies by nature need a certain amount of square meters of space to operate in. It always succeeds best when there's high demand and low supply. And the current supply of these solutions is typically located in central business districts, now post-corona, away from many of their users are based. And from a digital marketplace point of view, of course, it's a brokerage of short-term space. It succeeds with those high volumes, but its obvious focus on transaction and not on service. And so we complete that picture of, hey, CRE, how do we look towards the future? Then my opinion, and that of the company Denizen that I represent, is that we should be looking to build a platform solution that represents the 90% of commercial real estate in Central Europe, which is not Class A, which is typically 5-6-story buildings, a couple of thousand square feet, fragmented ownership, multiple landlords, multiple players involved, and look to build a solution around that. So rather than space as a service, we take the mindset of space with a service. One could argue that the genie is out of the bottle in terms of where the kind of future control will lie. The employee is the person in future that is going to dictate not where they work, but a question of how they work. Are they looking for a space for focused work? Are they looking for a space to collaborate? Are they looking for a space to simply escape the house and do back-to-back calls? And that's clearly going to require a much more distributed and decentralized approach to how we develop future of workplace and future of space as a service solutions. So I want to make the analogy coming back to kind of the shift from pipeline industries, which have typically always seek to create advantage by controlling valuable assets. And even if you think back over the last decade, the phenomenal growth of co-working is based on that sort of race to achieve the most amount of bought or leased space in key locations. Yet platform industries have never actually sought that path. Instead, they create advantage through its members and what they contribute to the ecosystem that they exist in. Pipeline industries typically create value by controlling the entire chain of its activities, from the product development to the sales and support. Whereas a platform economy actually seeks the opposite, not to take direct control of that, but to outsource that to multiple third-party producers, so that way the customer gets a better, more localized, more personalized experience and is way more scalable. And then lastly, the pipeline industries typically focus on the lifetime value of the individual customer, whereas a platform, and think about that ecosystem that I presented before of employees, tenants, and landlords, is focused on increasing the value of the entire ecosystem and being way more adaptable to prioritizing its focus so that it can not just retain but attract new members into that ecosystem as well. So thinking of Central Europe in mind, our opinion is that we need to shift away from this sort of singular entities, these standalone buildings that try to cater to everyone and sadly in many cases please no one, and instead shift to a paradigm of open-sourced inventory where we connect the right person into the right space at the right time, which I often think will now be driven by skill rather than necessarily by brand. This in no way means the death of the office, quite the opposite. But it creates a huge opportunity, especially in the short term, for tenants in particular, not to see their vacant offices today as a cost, but as an asset, a bit like Airbnb, as a shareable space that can bring in partners and other kind of constituent components of the neighborhood and the cities that they live within. The secret, of course, is that it's not just about space, but it's about providing service and convenience layers around that, especially focused on the pains people face in their last mile and their first mile journeys to and from work. Someone much smarter than me last year wrote this great quote, Dror Pellick: "The space of the future is not a single space; it's a network of locations connected together by sophisticated software and a layer of other services." And so in this concluding slide, that's how we see life at Denizen, that the future neighborhoods are a network of interconnected locations that offer space, service, and convenience on demand. And by doing that, we create a marketplace. It's physically managed. It empowers people to view space as an asset, not as a cost. And lastly, it's focused on all moments as being a platform, an ecosystem that connects users, tenants, and landlords. I'm really looking forward to discussing this and other subjects in the panel that will take place a little bit later. But in the meantime, if this short presentation has inspired you, do check out this article already from 2016 in Harvard Business Review, Pipelines, Platforms, and the New Rules of Strategy, which has inspired this presentation, and one that I think that everyone in commercial real estate at the moment should be reading. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, David. That was amazing. So thank you again, and we will see you for sure back in 10 minutes time on the round table,